At the elegant engagement dinner, my parents raised their glasses, then called me a parasite right in front of my fiancé. I smiled, set down my napkin, and said, "Then I'm moving out tonight." That evening, leaked messages from my mother's friend group left me stunned. They'd been coaching each other on how to humiliate me for months. The next morning, I submitted the loan application I'd prepared in secret, not to prove myself, but to sign for my dream home. The exact house my parents had always coveted but could never afford. When the sold sign went up in front of them, I handed the keys to the man of my life and closed another door forever. My name is Avery Cole, and I learned that family can be your greatest saboteur at precisely 7:43 p.m. on a Friday evening at the Harborview Pearl, the finest seafood restaurant overlooking our Maine coastline. The private dining room glowed with warm amber light from the brass sconces, casting shadows that danced across the white linen tablecloth. I watched the condensation bead on my untouched glass of Sancerre as my father, Charles Cole, stood with the practiced ease of a man who'd never doubted his place in the world, his navy blazer stretched slightly across shoulders that had softened with age and privilege. Beside him, my mother Linda adjusted her pearl necklace, the one she wore to every occasion she deemed significant. "To Avery and Ethan," my father began, his voice carrying that particular timbre of false warmth I'd learned to recognize over 31 years. The other diners, my parents' friends, mostly raised their glasses obediently. "May Ethan prove strong enough to carry the burden he's taking on." The words hung in the air like the scent of garlic butter from the lobster tails growing cold on my plate. I felt Ethan's hand tense under the table where our fingers had been intertwined. My mother's laugh tinkled like breaking glass. "Charles, don't be cruel." But her smile said otherwise as she added, "Though we all know Avery has never quite been up to standard. If it weren't for our constant support, guidance, and, frankly, financial backing, well," she let the implication settle over the table like a shroud. I studied the precise fold of my napkin, the way the light refracted through my water glass, the small chip in the bread plate's gold rim, anything to avoid seeing the mix of pity and curiosity on the faces around us. My pulse remained steady, controlled, the way I'd learned to manage it during high-stakes project presentations at Stonebridge Buildworks. This was just another hostile stakeholder meeting, wasn't it? "Actually," I said, my voice cutting through the uncomfortable murmur that had started among the guests. I stood slowly, deliberately, placing my napkin beside my plate with the precision of someone defusing a bomb. "You're absolutely right, Mom. I haven't been up to your standard." The room stilled. Even the servers hovering near the kitchen door seemed to freeze. "Your standard," I continued, meeting her gaze directly for the first time in years, "requires accepting humiliation as love. It demands gratitude for manipulation disguised as generosity. It insists I remain small enough to fit in the box you've built for me." I reached for my clutch, extracting my credit card with movements that felt choreographed by someone else, someone braver. "I'll be settling my portion of the bill now, and I'll be leaving. Not just this dinner, but everything you think gives you the right to diminish me." The engagement ring box sat heavy in my pocket, not because I was ending things with Ethan God, no, but because I refused to let them witness something sacred, refused to give them another moment to poison with their particular brand of toxic privilege. I pulled it out and set it on my bread plate not as an ending, but as a promise to myself that when Ethan proposed again, it would be somewhere free of their shadow. "Avery, sit down," my father commanded, his face flushing the particular shade of burgundy that usually preceded his lectures about family obligation and proper behavior. "No." 2 letters. 1 syllable. 3 decades in the making. I signaled the server, handed her my card, and specified clearly, "For my meal and my fiancé's, please, nothing else." As I walked toward the door, I heard my mother's voice, pitched for the audience. "She'll be back by morning. She always comes crawling back." Ethan stood, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor with a sound like finality. "Mrs. Cole," he said, his engineer's precision evident in every word. "You've just lost the best thing that ever came from your family, and you're too blind to see it." He followed me out into the salt-tinged October air, where the harbor lights reflected off the black water like scattered coins. Neither of us looked back at the Harbor View Pearl, at the warm glow spilling from its windows, at the life I was leaving behind one carefully measured step at a time. "Your apartment or mine?" Ethan asked quietly. "Mine," I said, already calculating password changes, account transfers, pre-approval letters I'd kept hidden in my desk drawer like escape plans. But not for long. The manipulation hadn't started with grand gestures, it never does. Sitting in my apartment at 2:15 a.m., laptop open to my banking accounts, I traced the pattern backward like a forensic accountant searching for fraud. It began my sophomore year at University of Maine. I'd come home for Thanksgiving to find our kitchen transformed granite countertops, custom cabinetry, a 6-burner Viking range that my mother would use maybe twice a year. "Surprise," Linda had beamed, hugging me with her perfectly manicured nails digging slightly into my shoulders. "We used your college fund for the down payment. You understand. Don't you, family investment? $20,000. Gone. I'd had to take out additional loans, work double shifts at the campus library, live on ramen and stubbornness. But whenever I'd tried to discuss it, the response was always the same. We've sacrificed so much for you, Avery. Don't be selfish." Ethan sat beside me now, reviewing the credit report I'd pulled up. His jaw tightened as he pointed to a line from 4 years ago. "This credit card, you never mentioned it." "Because I didn't know about it until the collections calls started." I pulled up the old emails I'd saved, evidence I'd compiled but never acted on. Dad opened it as a joint account to help build my credit. Used it for his golf membership. $3,000 in charges. When he forgot to pay, guess whose credit score took the hit? The pattern was all there, documented in a folder I'd labeled Independence Day, with bitter irony. Every gift had strings attached like puppet wires. The car they'd given me for graduation still in their name, insurance in mine. The family cell phone plan that somehow charged all overages to my line, the apartment deposit they'd helped with, then held over my head for 2 years of Sunday dinners where I sat silent while they dissected my failures. "Your mother joined that group 3 months ago," Ethan said, looking at his own phone. "Ladies of Harborview, my sister's friend is in it. She says it's toxic. They share strategies for controlling adult children." I laughed, bitter and sharp. "Of course she did. Right after I got promoted to senior project manager. The timing's perfect. I finally started making real money. Started feeling like I could breathe." I pulled up my spreadsheet, the one I'd been building secretly for months like an escape plan. Credit score 790. Savings 43,000, including my vested RSUs. Pre-approval letter from Briar Ridge Federal for 350,000. I've been planning this. Ethan. Not the dramatic exit, but the freedom. He studied the numbers, then me. "You've been preparing to leave." "I've been preparing to live," I corrected. "There's a difference. I thought I could do it gradually, set boundaries slowly. But tonight, I closed my eyes, seeing again my mother's satisfied smile as she'd called me substandard. Tonight, I realized they'll never stop seeing me as property they can depreciate for tax purposes. My phone buzzed. A text from Linda. "Your tantrum is embarrassing. Return your father's calls immediately." I showed Ethan. He took my phone and typed, "All future communication through email only. Account passwords changed. Credit frozen. A." "Too harsh?" he asked, thumb hovering over send. "Too kind," I said, but let him send it anyway. I opened a new document and began typing, my fingers flying across the keys with the same efficiency I used to draft project scopes. "Asset separation plan," I titled it. "Timeline immediate." "You know," Ethan said quietly, "my parents never understood why I fell for you. Said you seemed controlled, distant." I looked up at him. They didn't understand that what they saw as cold was actually strength. You've been fighting this battle alone for years, haven't you? Not anymore, I said, then amended. I mean, I'm still fighting it alone. This isn't your battle. Avery. He closed my laptop gently. I'm not going to fight your battles, but I'm going to stand next to you while you fight them. There's a difference. I thought about the engagement ring sitting in my purse, the one I'd removed from the table like evidence from a crime scene. I want to get married, Ethan, just not on their stage. Then we won't, he said simply. We'll do it on our terms, in our own space, when you're ready. Our own space. The words sparked something in my chest, a plan forming with the same clarity I felt when a project suddenly clicked into place. I reopened my laptop and navigated to the Harborview real estate listings. What are you looking for? Ethan asked. Redemption, I said, then corrected myself. No, that's their word. I'm looking for justice. The screenshots arrived at 6:37 a.m. on Saturday morning while I was reviewing my credit freeze confirmation. The sender was Aurelia Patterson, the pastor's wife who ran the youth shelter I'd helped secure funding for last year. Her message was simple. You need to see this. I'm sorry. What followed made my coffee turn to acid in my stomach. The Ladies of Harborview Facebook group was set to private, but Aurelia had been added 3 weeks ago. She'd taken methodical screenshots of every post where my name appeared, date-stamped and organized chronologically. My mother had been busy. Anyone else dealing with an ungrateful daughter who thinks her little career makes her special. Linda's first post, dated 3 months ago. 47 reactions, 82 comments. The responses were a masterclass in emotional manipulation tactics. Mine was the same. I started telling family members about her concerning behavior before gatherings. Now she can't act out without looking unstable. Document everything negative. Create a narrative. They'll either conform or look crazy fighting it. I told my daughter's boyfriend about her history of instability. He's been much more cooperative since. But it was Linda's response thread that stopped my breath. Planning to do this at her engagement dinner. Public humiliation works best with witnesses. She'll either crumble and apologize perfect or react badly better. Ethan will see her true colors. Already coached Charles on his toast. I set my phone down carefully, treating it like an explosive device. Ethan read over my shoulder, his expression shifting from confusion to disgust to rage. They planned it, he said slowly. Like a fucking military operation. I pulled up my project management software, the same one I used at Stonebridge Buildworks, and created a new file, Risk Assessment Linda Cole. What are you doing? Ethan asked. What I do best, I replied, fingers flying across the keyboard. Managing a project. I created columns threat level, evidence, mitigation strategy, countermeasure, under threat level. I typed reputation assassination via social network manipulation. Evidence, screenshots from Ladies of Harborview dated, authenticated. Mitigation strategy. Document all interactions. Create paper trail. Establish pattern of behavior. Countermeasure. This field I left blank. For now. My phone rang. Aurelia. Avery, there's more, she said without preamble. Your mother posted again this morning. She's claiming you're having a mental health crisis, that you attacked them at dinner and that she's concerned for your safety. I put her on speaker. Ethan's knuckles went white. She's establishing a narrative. Aurelia continued. I've seen this before. Next, she'll suggest you need help. Maybe an intervention. The group is already offering therapist recommendations, therapists who coincidentally believe in family reconciliation at all costs. Why are you telling me this? I asked. A pause. Because last year, when our shelter was 48 hours from closing, you didn't just write a check. You spent 3 weeks of your own time writing grant proposals, making calls, treating our crisis like it mattered. You never asked for recognition, never posted about it, just helped, she continued. And because 5 years ago, my daughter went through the same thing with me, I was in a group just like this one in Boston. I learned these tactics, used them, lost her for 2 years before I realized what I'd become. What changed? She sent me a cease and desist letter, Aurelia said quietly. Legal documentation of my behavior. It was like looking in a mirror for the first time. Your mother. She's not there yet. She's escalating. After I hung up, I sat in silence, processing. Then I opened a new browser window and navigated to the Massachusetts Bar Association website. Getting a lawyer. Ethan asked. Getting documentation. I corrected. But first, I navigated to the Seabreeze Heights real estate listings, the premium section my parents had favorited on their computer 100 times. I'm going to hit them where it actually hurts. Their reputation, their dreams, I said, clicking on a familiar listing. 14 Cliffside Lane, 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, original 1923 craftsman with ocean views. They've been saving for it for 15 years. Drove by it every Sunday after church. Mom has Pinterest boards dedicated to how she'd decorate it. I pulled up my pre-approval letter. $350,000. The house was listed at $335,000. You're going to buy their dream house, Ethan asked. I'm going to buy my house, I corrected. The fact that it's their fantasy is just poetic justice. I downloaded the screenshots from Aurelia and created a new folder, Evidence. Then I composed an email to my parents, CCing Ethan and BCCing my personal email for documentation. Mom and Dad, I've been made aware of your social media activity regarding my personal life. All future communication must be through written channels. Any attempt to contact my employer, colleagues, or spread false information about my mental health will be documented and addressed legally. Avery. Send it. I asked Ethan. Send it. He confirmed. The message swooshed away at 7:42 a.m., exactly 12 hours after their performance at dinner. My phone immediately exploded with calls. I let them all go to voicemail, each one automatically transcribed and saved to my evidence folder. By the time the 10th call came in, I'd already filled out the online form for a showing at 14 Cliffside Lane. The viewing was set for tomorrow at 2 p.m. The revolution had begun. The plan crystallized at 9:15 a.m. On Saturday night, while I sat cross-legged on my living room floor surrounded by financial documents, laptop open to 14 different tabs, and a legal pad filled with calculations that would make my parents weep. Your debt-to-income ratio is beautiful, Ethan said, reviewing my numbers with his engineer's eye for detail. 22% with the potential mortgage. Most banks want under 43. I pulled up my Briar Ridge Federal account, where my pre-approval letter sat like a loaded weapon. $350,000 approved, subject to verification of employment and final underwriting. My senior project manager salary at Stonebridge Buildworks' $92,000 plus bonuses had finally accumulated into real power. Here's what they don't know, I said, opening my Fidelity account. The RSUs that vested last month, $41,000 after taxes, plus my signing bonus I never touched $15,000, plus my emergency fund $28,000. Ethan whistled low. You could put down 25%. 20%, I corrected, already typing an email to Maya Rios, the realtor whose number I'd gotten from a colleague. The rest stays liquid for renovations and reserves. I'm not just buying a house, I'm buying security. Maya called back within 10 minutes. 14 Cliffside Lane gorgeous property, listed 10 days ago. One offer fell through due to financing. The sellers are motivated relocated for work, carrying 2 mortgages. How motivated? I asked. Switching to speaker. Make a clean offer with quick close. They'll listen. Can you do inspection within 5 days? Close in 21. I can close in 14 if needed, I said, watching Ethan's eyebrows rise. Cash reserves for down payment are liquid. Employment verification is straightforward. No contingencies except inspection. You've done this before. I manage multi-million-dollar construction projects. Maya. I've just never applied those skills to my personal life. Until now. Maya's voice sharpened with interest. The seller's agent mentioned another party is very interested but struggling with financing. Some couple who've been looking at it for years, apparently, keeps trying to negotiate seller financing. My parents. Had to be. I want to see it tomorrow at 2, I said. And Maya, I need you to understand something. This isn't about emotion or revenge or any narrative others might create. This is a strategic financial decision based on market conditions and personal readiness. Of course, Maya replied, but I could hear her curiosity. Though, in my experience, the best purchases usually have a little emotion behind them. After she hung up, I pulled up the property listing again. The photos showed honeyed hardwood floors, original built-in craftsman cabinetry, a kitchen with period-appropriate updates. The primary bedroom had French doors opening onto a small balcony with ocean views, the same views my mother had photographed obsessively from the street during their Sunday drives. You know they'll find out, Ethan said quietly. I'm counting on it. I opened a new spreadsheet titled Offer Strategy. But not until it's too late. Main real estate transactions aren't public until after closing. The MLS will show pending, but not the buyer's name. I began filling in my offer parameters. List price $335,000, offer $338,000, showing strength without being reckless. Down payment $67,600, 20%. Earnest money $10,000, serious buyer signal inspection. Period 5 days, closing 21 days or sooner. Financing contingency. None cash reserves proven appraisal contingency waived. I'd done my research. You're overbidding, Ethan noted. $3,000 over asking in this market is strategic positioning. It says I'm serious but not desperate. More importantly, I pulled up my parents' bank's website, where I still had access to their accounts from when I'd helped them set up online banking. I didn't look at the balances that would be unethical, but I knew their savings patterns, their spending habits. They can't match it without liquidating retirement funds. This is really about math for you, isn't it? Ethan asked, studying my face. No, I admitted, closing the laptop. But if I let it be about feelings, I'll either back down or go too far. This, I gestured at the papers around us. This is controlled demolition. Precise. Measured. Effective. My phone buzzed. Another text from Linda. Your father is having chest pains from your behavior. I hope you're satisfied. I screenshot it, added it to the evidence folder, and texted back, call 911 if medical emergency. Otherwise, email only. Then I blocked her number. Chest pains. Ethan scoffed. Same playbook as when you tried to change majors. And when I moved into my own apartment, and when I started dating you, I stood, gathering the papers into a neat stack. The difference is, this time I'm not calling to check, not rushing over with apologies, not giving them the reaction they need. I walked to my bedroom closet and pulled out the outfit I'd wear tomorrow, my best professional blazer, the one I wore to board presentations. Conservative, competent, expensive enough to show success, modest enough to avoid flashiness. You're treating this like a business acquisition, Ethan observed from the doorway. Because it is, I replied, hanging the blazer carefully. I'm acquiring my freedom. The house is just the paperwork. I set 3 alarms for the morning, then pulled up my laptop one more time to review the listing. In the photos, morning light flooded through original wavy glass windows. The backyard stretched toward the clifftop path where my parents had walked every Sunday, pointing at this house, planning their eventual triumph. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., I would walk through those rooms not as Charles and Linda Cole's disappointing daughter, but as Avery Cole, senior project manager, pre-approved buyer, and architect of my own future. The revolution wasn't about tearing down their dreams, it was about building my own life from the lumber of their lies. The open house at 14 Cliffside Lane started at 2 p.m. sharp. I arrived at 1:58. Maya Rios already waiting by the weathered driftwood sign that marked the property line. Other buyers are here, she murmured, nodding toward the familiar Lexus parked 3 spaces down. My parents' car, The one with the Harborview Country Club sticker and the faded, "My daughter is an honor student" decal they'd never removed from high school. 15 years ago. Good, I said, pulling on my leather gloves with deliberate calm. Let's go. The front door opened into a foyer with original penny tile that Linda had once described to her book club as perfectly preserved history. I walked past the coat closet she'd planned to convert, through the living room where she'd imagined her chintz sofas, and stood at the windows overlooking the Atlantic. The ocean spread gray-green under October clouds, waves creating white foam against the rocks below. Avery, my mother's voice, pitched high with shock. I turned slowly, professionally, as if encountering a colleague at a conference. Hello, Linda, Charles. I used their first names deliberately, watching my father's face redden. What are you doing here? Linda's fingers clutched her Hermes bag, the one she'd bought instead of contributing to my college textbooks junior year. Same as you, I imagine, viewing a property. I turned to Maya. I'd like to see the mechanicals first. The basement, then the attic. I need to assess the HVAC age, electrical panel capacity, and roof access. Maya, bless her professional composure, simply nodded. Of course. Right this way. In the basement, I ran my phone's flashlight along the joists, checking for water damage and noting the copper piping updated recently. Good. The electrical panel was modern, 200 amp service, sufficient for the EV charger I'd want to install. The boiler was 8 years old, likely good for another 7 with proper maintenance. I took photos, made notes in my phone, treating this like any site inspection at work. The foundation. I asked Maya. Inspected 2 years ago. No issues. Reports are available. Charles and Linda had followed us down, Linda's heels clicking precariously on the wooden stairs. You can't afford this, Charles said flatly. Stop embarrassing yourself. I continued examining the sump pump, noting its manufacture date. Maya, is there a history of flooding in this area? None recorded. The property sits high enough. She's wasting everyone's time. Linda interrupted. She makes barely $70,000, 92, I corrected, testing the basement window latches. Plus bonuses, plus vested equity. But please, continue telling strangers my financial information. We moved to the main floor. I measured rooms with my laser meter, another tool from work, recording dimensions in my phone. The kitchen had been updated with period-appropriate soapstone counters and a restored 1920s O'Keefe and Merritt stove that I knew Linda coveted. I ran water in the sink, checking pressure, opened cabinets to inspect for water damage, tested every burner on the stove. This is ridiculous, Linda hissed to Charles, but loud enough for everyone to hear. She's playing pretend. I climbed to the attic, checking insulation depth, looking for signs of pests or roof leaks. The space was clean, dry, well ventilated. Good bones, as they said in construction. This house had been loved, maintained, cared for everything my childhood home hadn't been. Back on the main floor. I stood in the primary bedroom, testing the French doors to the balcony. They needed adjustment sticking slightly, but the hardware was original and salvageable. The view stretched infinite. Ocean meeting sky in a line so clean it could have been drawn with a ruler. We're prepared to offer asking price, Charles announced to the listing agent who'd just arrived. Cash deal, quick close. The agent looked interested. When can you provide proof of funds? Our banker can Monday. Charles fumbled. We're moving some investments around. I pulled out my phone and opened my Briar Ridge Federal app. Maya, I'm ready to submit an offer. 338. 20% down. Pre-approval letter is in your email. Proof of funds. I showed her my account screen. Readily available. Inspection within 5 days. Close in 21 or sooner. The room went silent except for the sound of the ocean through the old windows. That's our house. Linda's voice cracked. We've been saving. For 15 years. I finished. I know. Every Sunday after church, you'd drive by, take pictures, plan your furniture placement, tell anyone who'd listen about your future home. I turned to Maya. I'd like to include an escalation clause up to 345 in 2,000 increments. Charles stepped forward. Avery Cole, you will not. Mr. Cole, Maya interrupted smoothly. I need to remind everyone that this is an open house. All buyers are welcome to submit offers. The listing agent was typing rapidly on his phone. Ms. Cole, your offer is very strong. We'll present it to the sellers immediately. We'll beat any offer she makes, Linda said desperately. Then do it, I said simply. Submit your proof of funds. Show your pre-approval. Compete. I knew they couldn't. Their retirement was locked in IRAs with penalty withdrawals. Their liquid savings, I'd seen the statements they'd carelessly left on the kitchen counter for years, wouldn't cover 10% down. Their credit, while decent, carried too much debt from the kitchen renovation, the Lexus, the country club membership they couldn't actually afford. This is about revenge, Linda said, tears starting to form. You're trying to hurt us. No, I said, signing Maya's offer paperwork on her tablet with steady hands. This is about mathematics, square footage, location, market value, investment potential. You taught me to be calculating. Remember, emotions are for weak people. Avery, your words. I initialed the last page and handed the tablet back. My offer stands as written. May the best buyer win. As I walked out, I heard Charles on the phone with their banker, his voice desperate. Linda was crying, mascara running in tiny rivers down her carefully contoured cheeks. At 3:47 p.m., Maya texted, "Sellers accepted your offer. Congratulations." At 3:52 p.m., my phone exploded with calls from blocked numbers my parents, trying every phone they could access. At 4 p.m., I texted Ethan, "Got it." His response, "Your place or mine tonight?" "Mine," I replied. But not for long. The counterattack began at 7:22 a.m. on Monday morning, while I was reviewing the inspection report over coffee. My work phone, the number my parents didn't have, rang with a call from Stonebridge Buildworks' HR department. "Avery, this is Patricia from Human Resources. We've received some concerning calls about you. Can you come in early today?" My stomach tightened, but my voice remained level. "Of course, 8:30. "That works. And Avery, bring any documentation you might have regarding family situations." They'd called my employer. Of course they had. I arrived at the office with a folder containing the screenshots from the Ladies of Harborview group, the text messages about fake chest pains, and a timeline I'd created at 3 a.m. Patricia sat across from me in the small conference room, her expression professionally neutral. "Your mother called our main line 6 times between Friday night and this morning," she began. "She claims you're having a mental health crisis, that you've stolen family money, and that we should be aware of your instability for the safety of other employees." I slid my folder across the table. "I expected this. Here's the actual situation." Patricia reviewed the documents, her eyebrows rising progressively higher. After 15 minutes, she closed the folder. "This is comprehensive and disturbing." "There's more," I said, pulling up my email. "This morning, she contacted 3 of my clients on LinkedIn, warning them about my deteriorating mental state." Patricia's expression hardened. "She contacted your clients, Jefferson Construction, Ridgeline Development, and Coastal Engineering Group. I've already reached out to apologize and explain the situation." I showed her the responses, all 3 clients expressing support and disgust at the harassment. "Avery, I need to ask, is there any truth to the financial accusations?" I pulled up my bank statements on my phone. "Here's my down payment for the house I'm purchasing, every dollar legally earned and saved. Here's my employment history, my tax returns, my credit report. I'm happy to provide any documentation you need." Patricia nodded. "We'll need to document this harassment. I'm recommending we send a cease and desist letter from our legal department to your parents. This is interfering with company business." "I appreciate that," I said, then hesitated. "There's something else. They're likely to escalate." As if on cue, my personal phone buzzed with a text from Aurelia. Your mother just posted in the group that she's organizing an intervention at your home. Tonight. She has 12 women signed up to confront your delusions with love. I showed Patricia, who immediately picked up her desk phone. Security. We need to flag potential disruption risks for employee Avery Cole. The rest of my workday proceeded in surreal normalcy. I led my usual Monday morning project meeting, reviewed specifications for the Harbor Plaza development, and submitted 3 bid proposals. But my phone continued buzzing with increasingly frantic messages forwarded from various sources. Charles had apparently visited the sellers of 14 Cliffside Lane, trying to convince them I was using stolen family money. Maya sent me a recording of the conversation. Maine is a one-party consent state, and she was protecting her client. The sellers hadn't budged. My proof of funds was solid. At 4 p.m., I texted Ethan, intervention party at my place tonight. Want to catch a movie instead? His response, already booked us a room at the Marriott. Figured this was coming. But I had one more card to play. I drafted an email to the Ladies of Harborview Group Administrator, a public message that would be visible to all members. Dear Ladies of Harborview, my name is Avery Cole. I'm aware of the discussions about me in this group, including the planned harassment at my home tonight. Please be advised I have documented all posts, comments, and plans made in this group regarding me. These documents have been provided to my employer's legal team and local law enforcement. Any person who appears at my residence will be considered trespassing and treated accordingly. The screenshots include admissions of coordinated harassment that may constitute criminal conspiracy. I'm sure you're all fine. Upstanding members of the community who wouldn't want to be associated with potential criminal activity. I trust tonight's intervention will be canceled. Regards, Avery Cole, Senior Project Manager, Stonebridge Buildworks. I CC'd Patricia from HR, Maya, and for good measure, added the Harborview Police Department's community liaison email. The response was immediate. My phone lit up with notifications as women began leaving the group en masse. Aurelia sent a laughing emoji. Linda just had a meltdown in the comments before the admin deleted everything and went private. By 6:45 p.m., when the intervention was supposed to begin, Ethan and I were settled in our hotel room with Thai takeout and my laptop, tracking the closing documents for 14 Cliffside Lane. The inspection contingency is cleared, I noted, marking another item off my list. Final walkthrough scheduled for Thursday, closing next Monday at 10 a.m. Your parents? Ethan asked. I pulled up my email. 17 messages from various family friends. All variations of, your mother is concerned, and this isn't like you, and family is everything. I drafted a single response. BCCing everyone. Thank you for your concern. I'm in excellent health, mentally and physically. I'm purchasing a home through legitimate means, advancing in my career, and setting appropriate boundaries with people who've caused me harm. If this seems unusual, perhaps consider what that says about your previous perceptions of me. Any further contact regarding my parents' manufactured crisis will be forwarded to my attorney. Avery. Send. Linda's final text before I blocked her on this number too. You won't get away with this. That house is ours. I looked at Ethan, then at the inspection report for 14 Cliffside Lane, then at the photo I'd taken of the view from the primary bedroom. They're right about one thing, I said. I am different. I finally learned to fight like they do, but with better documentation. The hotel room phone rang. The front desk, Ms. Cole. We have someone here claiming to be your mother, demanding your room number. Should we call security? I said calmly. She's not welcome. I hung up and turned off my phone. The rest could wait until morning. Tonight, I was unreachable, protected, and for the first time in 31 years, truly free. The closing was scheduled for 10 a.m. at Harborview Title and Escrow, a converted Victorian on Main Street with dark wood panels and the smell of old paper and fresh coffee. I arrived at 9:45, my folder of documents organized with color-coded tabs, a habit from managing construction projects where one missing form could delay everything. Maya was already there, reviewing the settlement statement one final time. Everything's ready. The sellers signed earlier this morning. Just you now. The title officer, a methodical woman named Dorothy, laid out the papers in neat rows across the mahogany conference table. Deed, title insurance, closing disclosure, each document a small victory, a brick in the wall I was building between my past and future. At 9:58, I heard familiar voices in the lobby. "We demand to be part of this proceeding." Linda's voice carried through the oak door. "That's our daughter in there." Dorothy looked at me, eyebrows raised. I nodded toward the door. "They're not parties to this transaction. Please have security escort them out if they don't leave voluntarily." But I knew they wouldn't leave, not without their final scene. "Let them in," I said, surprising Maya. "But they stand by the door. They don't approach the table." Dorothy hesitated, then opened the door. Charles and Linda entered like actors taking the stage, dressed in their Sunday best, the same outfits they wore to country club events where they pretended to belong. "Avery," Charles began, his voice attempting authority. "This stops now." I picked up the pen, testing its weight. "You're right, it does stop now." I began signing the deed, my signature flowing across the line with practiced precision. "That house was promised to us." Linda's voice cracked. "The realtor said we just needed more time to arrange financing." "The sellers accepted my offer," I said, initialing the title insurance documents. "That's how real estate works. Best offer wins." "Sue, we raised you." "You charged me for it." I pulled out my phone, showing them the spreadsheet I'd maintained. 4 years of borrowed college funds, $20,000. Credit card fraud, $3,000. Family expenses charged to my accounts, $12,000. Therapy to recover from your emotional manipulation, $8,000 and counting. Total $43,000, considerably less than my down payment on this house. I signed the closing disclosure, the pen scratching softly against paper. "You owe us." Charles stepped forward, but the security guard Dorothy had quietly called moved to block him. "Everything you have is because of us." "No." I set down the pen and looked at them directly. "Everything I have is despite you. My career built while you told everyone I'd fail. My savings accumulated while you drained my accounts. My relationship survived your attempts to sabotage it. My credit score rebuilt after you destroyed it." I turned to the final document, the mortgage note. $300,000 borrowed at 4.7%. A debt. But my debt. Chosen. Not imposed. "I have something for you," I said, reaching into my bag. I pulled out a manila envelope and handed it to the security guard to give to them. Copies of every screenshot from the ladies of Harborview Group, every text about fake medical emergencies, every attempt to contact my employer, every lie you've told about me. My attorney has the originals. Linda's face went white. "You wouldn't—" "I won't," I said, signing the mortgage note with a flourish. "Unless you contact me, Ethan, my employer, or anyone in my life again. Then I'll share them with everyone in your social circle, your church, your country club, everyone." Dorothy slid the final paper across the keys exchange form. I signed it, and she handed me a small envelope. The weight of it was surprising. 2 keys, brass and solid, still warm from sitting in the sunlit office. "Congratulations, Ms. Cole," Dorothy said formally. "You're now the owner of 14 Cliffside Lane." At that moment, the title company's assistant entered with their portable sign, the one they used for closing photos. "Sold," it read in bold letters. Maya positioned it on the table, and Dorothy raised her phone. "A photo to commemorate?" she asked. "Yes," I said, standing behind the sign, keys visible in my hand. "Please," the camera clicked. "Oh," I added, as if remembering something. "Maya, didn't you say the sellers left something?" Maya smiled, pulling out another envelope. "They wanted the new owner to have this historical documents about the house, original blueprints, photos from the 1920s, records of all the families who've lived there." I opened it slowly, knowing Charles and Linda were watching. Inside, along with the historical documents, was a handwritten note. "May this home bring you the peace and joy you deserve." We're glad it's going to someone who'll truly cherish it. I tucked the envelope under my arm and walked toward the door. My parents stood frozen, looking older somehow, smaller. For a moment, just a moment, I saw them clearly, not as the titans of my childhood or the villains of my rebellion, but as what they'd always been, two people so terrified of their own inadequacy that they'd tried to ensure I'd never surpass them. "The house was never yours," I said quietly, stopping beside them. "You just drove past it every Sunday, imagining a life you never worked for. That's the difference between us. I don't imagine. I build." I walked out into the October morning, where Ethan waited by my car. Behind us, through the window, I could see Charles and Linda still standing in the conference room, staring at the sold sign Dorothy had left on the table. "Ready to see our house?" Ethan asked, emphasizing the word our. "My house," I corrected, but smiled. "Our home." As we drove toward Cliffside Lane, I saw them in my rearview mirror, standing on the sidewalk outside the title company. Linda was crying. Charles was on his phone, probably calling their banker again, still trying to undo what was already done. The keys sat heavy in my pocket, metal warmed by my hand. At 10:43 a.m., I turned onto Cliffside Lane and saw it my house, solid and real against the October sky, the ocean spreading endless beyond it. The sold sign was already posted in the yard, visible from the street where my parents had parked every Sunday for 15 years, dreaming of what could be theirs. Now it was mine. The housewarming party started at 6 p.m., on Saturday, 6 days after closing. Just enough time to move my essentials, but not enough to unpack properly. Boxes lined the walls of the living room like cardboard spectators. The dining table was a door laid across sawhorses, borrowed from a Stonebridge Buildworks job site, paper plates, plastic cups, and 3 pizzas from Tony's Marina, nothing like the elaborate dinner parties Linda used to stress over for weeks. It was perfect. Maya arrived first, bringing a succulent in a ceramic pot shaped like a tiny house. "For someone who knows how to close a deal," she said, setting it on the mantel. Aurelia came with her daughter, the one who'd sent the cease and desist letter years ago. They understood each other, these two women who'd drawn boundaries in ink and law. Patricia from HR brought wine and a card signed by my entire project team. My colleagues from Stonebridge Buildworks scattered through the rooms, admiring the crown molding and original hardwood floors, talking shop about load-bearing walls and restoration possibilities. At 7:15, Ethan clinked his beer bottle with a fork. "A toast," he announced. The room quieted, faces turning toward us in the golden light of sunset through the old windows. "To Avery," he began, who spent years being told she wasn't enough and responded by becoming more than they could imagine. To the woman who treats life like a project plan and executes flawlessly. To someone who bought not just a house, but her freedom. And, I added, raising my own cup, to everyone here who saw me for who I actually am, not who others said I was. This house isn't just mine. It's proof that the right people believing in you matters more than family members tearing you down. We drank, and someone started music on a Bluetooth speaker, the kind of music Linda would have called unrefined. The bass thumped through the floorboards, and nobody complained about property values or what the neighbors might think. At 8:30, while showing Aurelia the view from the primary bedroom balcony, she pointed toward the street. "Is that—" A familiar Lexus drove slowly past, the way it had every Sunday for 15 years. Through the passenger window, I could see Linda's face, staring at my lit windows, at the cars in my driveway, at the life happening without her. "Every night this week," I said quietly. "They drive by every night." "Does it bother you?" I thought about it, watching their car pause at the stop sign longer than necessary. No, they're still dreaming about a house. I'm living in it. The car drove on, disappearing around the corner toward their own home, the one with the kitchen renovation they couldn't afford, in the neighborhood where they pretended to belong, surrounded by people they performed for daily. Back downstairs, I found Ethan in the kitchen, peeling the label off his beer bottle, his thinking gesture. Your mom sent another email to my work, he said. My boss forwarded it to me. She says you're mentally ill, that you've been manipulated by me, that she's concerned for your welfare. And my boss wrote back one line, Ms. Cole seems exceptionally sound of mind. Please don't contact our firm again. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks. The sound echoed off the empty walls, filling the space with something that had never existed in my childhood home, genuine joy. At 10:45, after everyone left except Ethan, we sat on the front porch steps, looking out at the ocean, the October air bit sharp and salt-tinged. Above us, the sold sign still hung from the sailpost. I'd kept it as a monument, or maybe a warning. I need to tell you something, Ethan said. I brought the ring, the one from the restaurant. I know you set it down that night not to end things, but to start them right. So, whenever you're ready, wherever you want, however you want. Here, I said immediately. Now, on the porch of my house, with boxes in the living room and pizza grease on paper plates and everything imperfect and absolutely real. He pulled out the small velvet box, opened it on the step between us. The ring caught the porch light, simple, elegant, chosen without committee input or parental approval. Avery Cole, he said, will you marry me in your own house, on your own terms, as your complete self? Yes, I said, taking the ring and sliding it on my own finger. Another thing Linda would have called improper. But the wedding's going to be small. Maybe right here. Pizza, beer, and only people who actually love us. Perfect, he said. My phone buzzed with one final message from a flying monkey, some cousin I barely knew. Your mother says you've stolen her life. I showed Ethan, then typed back, she's wrong. I've built my own. Then I blocked the number, set the phone aside, and sat on my porch with my fiancé, looking at the ocean through the darkness, listening to the waves crash against the rocks below, the same sound that had echoed through 15 years of someone else's dreams. The house at 14 Cliffside Lane creaked around us, settling into its foundation, solid and sure. Inside, boxes waited to be unpacked, walls waited for paint, rooms waited to become home. But tonight, with Ethan's hand warm in mine and my parents' dreams finally laid to rest, I had everything I needed. I'd bought more than a house. I'd purchased proof that the best revenge isn't destroying someone else's life. It's building your own, brick by brick, signature by signature, without apology or permission. The sold sign swayed in the ocean breeze, and I smiled. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family who couldn't accept your success? How did you handle it? Your stories matter too, and this community is here for all of us finding our way to freedom.